The coalition was losing the war. For 30 cycles they had fought against the Dominion. They had lost planet after planet. Their fleets were broken. Their people were dying. Now, at Orbital Station Nexus 7, they prepared for what might be their final stand. Fleet Admiral Torres floated on the command deck of his flagship, watching the battle through the main viewing screen. His tentacles moved slowly as he counted the enemy ships. There were too many. There were always too many. "Admiral," Commander said, his scales flickering with worry, "they are breaking through our left formation. We have lost 6 more ships." Torres closed his large eyes for a moment. 6 more ships, 6 more crews, thousands of lives gone in an instant. Pull back the remaining vessels, form a defensive ring around the station. It was all they could do. Defend, retreat, survive a little longer. They did not believe in aggression. They fought only when attacked, and now that philosophy was killing them. Then something strange happened. A bright flash of light appeared near the edge of the battlefield. It was not the usual shimmer of a jump or the red pulse of a rival. This was different, white and sharp, like a crack in the fabric of space itself. A ship emerged. It was small. Compared to the massive cruisers and the brutal warships, this vessel looked like a toy. It was angular, with hard edges and dark metal. Strange symbols were painted on its hull. "What is that?" Torres asked. Commander checked his instruments. "Unknown design, unknown origin. We have no record of this species in our database." On the bridge of the ROKS, Captain gripped his command chair as alarms screamed around him. The experimental jump drive had malfunctioned. Instead of a short test hop across their solar system, they had been thrown across the galaxy. "Where are we?" he demanded. Lieutenant Commander was already working at her console. Her fingers moved fast, her face tight with focus. "Unknown location. I cannot find any familiar stars." She paused. "Captain, there are ships everywhere, hundreds of them, and they are shooting at each other." Looked at the main screen. She was right. Space was filled with fire and debris. Massive vessels exchanged beams of energy. Smaller fighters weaved between them. Explosions bloomed in the darkness. "We jumped into a war zone," Pilot said. His voice was calm, but his hands were tight on the controls. "Can we jump back?" asked. Chief Engineer's voice came through the speakers from the engine room. "Negative, Captain. The drive needs at least 6 hours to reset. We are stuck here." Before could respond, communications officer shouted, "Incoming. For a small craft approaching fast, they are targeting us." On the screen, 4 fighters broke away from the main battle. They had seen the strange new arrival and decided it was an easy target. Made his decision in 1 second. "All hands battle stations. Menu weapons free. Evasive pattern. Show them what we can do." They came alive. Threw the ship into a sharp roll just as the first fighter opened fire. The energy beam missed by meters. Menu, sitting calmly at the weapons console, locked onto the attacker and pressed the firing button. The roared. A solid metal slug accelerated to incredible speed, punched straight through the fighter. The alien ship exploded. They watched in shock. "What kind of weapon was that?" asked, staring at the data on his screen. "It was a solid projectile. They use kinetic weapons." Admiral Torres said nothing. He simply watched. The 3 remaining fighters adjusted their attack. They were fast and well-trained, but was faster. He spun the through impossible turns, using the ship's smaller size as an advantage. The human vessel moved in ways the aliens had never seen, unpredictable, aggressive, almost reckless. Menu destroyed the second fighter with another shot. The third fell to a burst of point defense cannons. The fourth tried to flee, but a guided missile chased it down and ended its existence in a ball of fire. 7 enemy kills in under 2 minutes. Silence fell over the command deck. "That small ship," Commander said slowly, "just destroyed 7 fighters by itself." Admiral Torres finally spoke. "Open a channel, I want to speak with them." Picked up the transmission first. Strange sounds came through the speakers, clicks and whistles that meant nothing to human ears, but was good at her job. Very good. She ran the sounds through translation software, looked for patterns, and within minutes had established basic communication. "Captain," she said, "they want to talk. The big ship, I think it is the flagship. They are asking who we are." Straightened his uniform. "Tell them we are the crew of the ROKS, representing Earth. We mean no harm, but we will defend ourselves." The message was sent. A response came quickly. "They are inviting us to dock at the station," reported. "They want to meet us in person." Leaned close to, "Can we trust them?" Looked at the massive ships on the screen. They could destroy thee easily if they wanted to, but they were asking to talk instead. That meant something. "We do not have much choice," he said. "Take us in." An hour later, Captain stood in a large chamber on Nexus 7. Beside him were Minu, and across from them stood Admiral Torres and Commander. They were tall and thin, with soft blue skin and many tentacles. Their eyes were large and dark. They moved gracefully, like creatures born in water. Torres studied the humans with obvious curiosity. "You are small," he observed, "and soft. You have no natural armor, no claws, no venom." "We have other advantages," replied calmly. Was looking at a device in his tentacle. "According to our scans, you are predators. Your eyes face forward for hunting. You have teeth designed for tearing meat. Your blood contains iron, a metal." His scales rippled. "You evolved on a harsh world." "Earth is our home," said simply. "It made us what we are." Admiral Torres waved a tentacle dismissively. "One small ship, no matter how impressive, cannot change this war. They are endless. We have been fighting them for 30 cycles." Met his gaze. "Then perhaps you need a new way of fighting." Torres did not respond, but Commander looked at the human captain with something new in his eyes. It was not friendship, not yet. But it was the beginning of respect. There was assigned to Sector 12. It was a quiet area, far from the front lines. There were no battles there, no important missions, just empty space and a few supply routes that nobody cared about. Captain understood the message. They did not trust them. They did not want the humans anywhere near the real fighting. They were giving the strange little ship a place to stay out of the way. But was not angry, he was patient. He used the time to learn. Every day he studied reports about the war. He watched recordings of past battles. He read everything he could find about tactics and strategy. And slowly, he began to understand why the coalition was losing. They were too careful, too defensive. They waited for the enemy to attack, then tried to survive. They never pushed forward. They never took risks. And they who had no such limits ate them alive piece by piece. Meanwhile, Ambassador Lyra arrived on the. She was sent by the coalition to observe the humans, to learn about them, to decide if they could be trusted. She was a small with pale green skin and curious eyes. Unlike Admiral Torres, she did not dismiss the humans. She wanted to understand them. And what she learned terrified her. "Your world," she said one day, sitting in the ship's small meeting room, "is classified as a death world." Looked up from her work. "A death world?" Lyra nodded. "The gravity is very strong. Your planet has extreme temperatures, burning heat and freezing cold. You have thousands of species of predators. You have diseases that can kill in days, storms that can destroy cities. And yet you survive there, you thrive there." Her voice dropped. "You are adapted to death." Chief Engineer laughed from the doorway. He was holding a cup of coffee. "We call it home. It is not so bad." Lyra stared at him. "Your species drinks a mild poison for energy. You damage your own muscles through exercise so they grow back stronger. You can survive losing limbs and continue fighting." She shook her head. "How are you even real?" Just smiled and went back to work. He had been busy, very busy. The The technology was advanced, but it was different from human engineering. Spent his nights studying it, learning it, and finding ways to combine it with their own systems. Slowly, there was becoming something new, a hybrid of two civilizations. Then the distress call came. Picked it up during a routine scan. Captain, I am receiving an emergency signal. A medical convoy is under attack. 3 transport ships carrying wounded soldiers and refugees. Raiders found them. Was on his feet immediately. Location: Sector 9, about 2 hours away at maximum speed. Check the tactical display. That is not our sector. We do not have authorization to leave our patrol zone. I know, said. He looked at the data on the screen. 3 transport ships, no weapons, no defenses, over 3,000 civilians and wounded soldiers. He made his decision. Set course for Sector 9, maximum speed. Stepped closer. Captain, Admiral Torres gave us direct orders. If we leave our sector without permission, then I will face the consequences, said calmly. But I will not sit here while innocent people die, not when we can help. Nobody argued. They turned and flew toward the battle. They arrived to chaos. 6 raider ships had surrounded the convoy. The transport vessels were slow and helpless. Their shields were failing. One of them was already on fire, venting atmosphere into space. All weapons ready, Minyu reported. His voice was flat, emotionless. His eyes were fixed on his targeting display. Open a channel to the raiders, ordered. Broadcast on all frequencies. Nodded and made the connection. Spoke clearly. Vessels, this is captain of the human warship. You will leave this convoy alone. If you do not, we will destroy you. For a moment there was silence. Then they responded with laughter, harsh, cruel sounds that needed no translation. They did not take the small human ship seriously. That was their mistake. Attack pattern Delta. Minyu, pick your targets. Let us teach them to fear us. They dove into the fight like a predator. Flew the ship with wild skill, weaving between enemy fire, using the debris from damaged ships as cover. They tried to track them, but the human vessel moved too fast, too unpredictably. Minyu fired with cold precision. Slugs tore through raider hulls. Missiles found their targets. Point defense cannons cut down incoming fire. But had another weapon, fear. Broadcast our battle music, everything we have, maximum volume. Suddenly the communication channels were filled with sound. Drums pounding, voices shouting. Human war songs from 1,000 years of history all playing at once. It was not beautiful, it was terrifying. They had never heard anything like it. One raider panicked and broke formation. Minyu destroyed it instantly. Another tried to flee and crashed into debris. In minutes, the battle was over. 4 raiders destroyed, 2 running for their lives. The convoy was saved. Lyra had watched the whole battle from the observation deck. Her hands were shaking. She had seen the human called Minyu work. He had killed dozens of enemies without hesitation. His face had shown nothing. No anger, no joy, no fear. You are not afraid, she said to him later. I watched your vital signs. Your heart did not even beat faster. Minyu looked at her with tired eyes. Fear comes later, he said. When the fighting is over, when there is time to think. During battle there is only the mission, only the people who need saving. Lyra did not know how to respond. Admiral Torres was furious. His voice came through the communication screen like thunder. You left your assigned sector without permission. You engaged enemy forces without authorization. You violated direct orders from Coalition Command. Captain stood straight and calm. Yes, Admiral, I did all of those things. You admit this. I do, and I would do it again. His voice did not waver. 3,000 lives, Admiral, wounded soldiers, refugees, children. They would be dead right now if we had followed your orders. Admiral Torres was silent for a long moment. His tentacles moved slowly, thinking. "You are reckless," he finally said. "Dangerous, unpredictable." "Yes," agreed. "Humans often are, but we are also loyal. We protect the innocent. We fight for those who cannot fight for themselves." He met the Admiral's gaze through the screen. "Is that not what this war should be about?" Admiral Torres did not answer, but when he ended the call, he did not mention punishment. And the next day, Commander sent a quiet message to the. It contained tactical data, battle plans, information about weaknesses. The message had no words, but its meaning was clear. The humans had earned their place. Word of the convoy rescue spread fast. In the refugee camps, they told stories of the small ship that came from nowhere. In military hospitals, wounded soldiers whispered about the strange aliens who played war music while they fought. In the halls of power, coalition leaders argued about what it meant. Some saw hope. After 30 cycles of losing, here was something new, something different, something that fought back. Others saw danger. These humans were violent, unpredictable. They ignored orders and did whatever they wanted. Could such creatures truly be trusted? And in the Dominion, Warlord received a report about a new enemy. He sat in his throne room, surrounded by the skulls of conquered species. His body was massive, covered in black armor that had grown from his own flesh. His eyes glowed red in the dim light. "Humans," he said, tasting the word. "From a world called Earth, a small ship, a small crew." His general stood before him. "They are nothing, my lord, a minor annoyance." Was quiet for a long moment, then he spoke again. "I have crushed 100 species, I have burned 1,000 worlds, and in all that time I have never seen anyone fight the way these creatures fight." He leaned forward. "Find out everything about them, everything, and then destroy them. Bow deeply, it will be done." On Nexus 7, Captain was called before the Coalition War Council. The chamber was vast and circular, filled with representatives from dozens of species. They sat in rising tiers, looking down at the human who stood alone in the center. Admiral Torres spoke first. "Captain, you have requested permission to address the council. We have granted this request. Speak." Looked around the room. He saw fear in many eyes, doubt in others, but he also saw a small flame of hope flickering in the darkness. That flame was enough. "Thank you, Admiral, I will speak plainly." He took a breath. "You are losing this war. You have been losing it for 30 cycles, and unless something changes, you will continue to lose until there is nothing left to fight for." Murmurs of anger rippled through the council, but continued. "I have studied your battles, your strategies, your history, and I see the same pattern over and over. You wait, you defend, you hope the enemy will stop attacking, but they never stop, they never will. They do not want peace. They want conquest, they want slaves, they want everything you have." "We know this," one council member said sharply. "What is your point?" "My point is simple. You cannot win a war by only defending. Sometimes you must attack." The chamber erupted. Voices shouted over each other. Tentacles waved in agitation. The idea was shocking to them, against everything they believed in. Admiral Torres raised a tentacle for silence. "We are not aggressors, Captain. We do not start wars. We do not destroy without cause. This is the foundation of civilization." Nodded slowly. "I understand, and I respect your beliefs, but consider this, a wall can be broken. No matter how strong, a wall simply waits to be destroyed, but a blade cannot be ignored. A blade makes the enemy think, makes them afraid, makes them make mistakes." Commander spoke up. "You are suggesting we become like the—" "No," shook his head firmly. "They attack the innocent, they conquer the weak. I am suggesting you attack the enemy. There is a difference. A soldier who protects their home is not the same as a monster who burns villages." He pulled up a display showing a map of enemy territory. "There is a supply depot in this system. It provides fuel and weapons to their main fleet. It is protected but not heavily. If we destroy it, we cut off their supplies. Their advance will slow. Their ships will be weaker. We buy time to regroup, to plan, to fight back." The council was silent. Finally, Admiral Torai spoke. "This is against everything we stand for." "Yes," agreed. "But you are dying. Sometimes survival requires change." The vote was close, very close, but in the end desperation won. The attack was approved. 3 days later, a small fleet gathered in deep space. 12 cruisers, 20 fighters, and 1 human warship. It was not much, but it was a start. Commander was assigned to coordinate with the. He boarded the human ship before the mission, curious to see how they operated. What he found surprised him. The humans were calm, relaxed, even. They joked with each other. They ate food that smelled strange and laughed at things did not understand. They seemed completely unconcerned about the coming battle. "How can you be so calm?" he asked. "We are about to attack an enemy base. Many of us may die." Smiled slightly. "We have a saying on Earth, worry about what you can control. I have checked my weapons. I have reviewed my duties. I have trained my whole life for moments like this. Worrying will not help, so I choose not to worry." Thought about this for a long time. The battle began at dawn. The coalition fleet emerged from jump space near the depot. Immediately, defenders scrambled to respond. Alarm signals filled the communications channels. Ships launched from docking bays. Weapons powered up. The captains formed their usual tight defensive formation. They began exchanging fire with the enemy, shot for shot, slow and careful. Captain had other plans. "Break formation, take us around the left side. We are going to flank them." Breaking formation now. The shot forward, leaving the safety of the line. It curved around the edge of the battle, moving fast and low. Said, "Tell your captains to spread out. Not a wall, a net. Make the divide their fire." Hesitated. It went against everything he had been taught, but he had seen the humans fight. He had seen them win. He gave the order. The ship spread out, confused but obedient. Though expecting a tight formation to target, suddenly had to track multiple targets across a wide area. Their fire became scattered, unfocused. And then they hit them from the side. Minu fired everything they had, punched through hulls. Missiles found critical systems. The defenders, caught between the frontal attack and this unexpected assault, began to fall apart. "Push forward," shouted. "All ships push forward now." And they did. For the first time in a decade, the coalition advanced. The supply depot burned. Fuel tanks exploded. Weapon stockpiles turned into fireballs. When it was over, the base was nothing but wreckage and ash. The coalition fleet had lost 2 ships. They had lost everything. General arrived too late. He emerged from jump space to find only debris and retreating allies. Standing on the bridge of his cruiser, he stared at the destruction. "The humans," he whispered, "this is their work." He pulled up the battle recordings. He studied every move they had made. He watched how they fought, wild and unpredictable, nothing like the careful. "I will learn your ways," he said to the empty screen, "and then I will end you." But far away, on a damaged but victorious ship, Captain allowed himself a small smile. They had won their first real battle. The war was not over. It had barely begun. But for the first time, the coalition had shown that they could fight back. And that made all the difference. General had learned. For weeks, he studied the humans. He watched every recording of their battles. He analyzed their movements, their tactics, their patterns. He read reports from spies about human history, human psychology, human warfare. And slowly, he began to understand. The humans were not random. They seemed unpredictable, but there was logic beneath the chaos. They took risks, but calculated risks. They attacked where enemies were weak. They retreated when the odds were too bad. They used their environment, debris, asteroids, space dust, as weapons. Once he understood, he could predict them. And once he could predict them, he could destroy them. The trap was perfect. Let the coalition hear whispers of a secret research station, a place where new weapons were being developed, a target too valuable to ignore. He knew the humans would come. He knew they would bring their allies. He was waiting for them. They dropped out of jump space, expecting a small station with light defenses. Instead, they found 60 warships arranged in a perfect killing formation. "It is a trap," shouted. "We need to leave now." Captain was already giving orders. "Emergency jump, get us out of here." But it was too late. Ships had positioned themselves to block all escape routes. Energy dampeners filled the area, preventing jump drives from activating. The coalition fleet, 12 ships that had come expecting an easy victory, was surrounded. General appeared on the communication screen. His face was cruel and satisfied. "Captain," he said, "I have waited for this moment. You taught the coalition new tricks. Now I will teach them what happens to those who oppose the Dominion." The battle was short and brutal. They attacked from all sides at once. Coalition ships exploded one after another. They fought desperately, but there were too many enemies. Flew like a man possessed, dodging fire that should have been impossible to avoid. Minyu fired until his weapons overheated. It was not enough. A beam hit them directly. The ship shook like it was being torn apart. Alarms screamed. Lights flickered and died. Smoke filled the corridors. In the engine room, threw himself over a critical power conduit as it exploded. The blast burned his arms and chest, but he held on. If that conduit failed completely, the engines would explode and take the whole ship with them. "Captain," he gasped into the communicator, "engines are damaged. I can give you emergency power, but that is all." On the bridge, suddenly cried out in pain. A piece of shrapnel from an exploding console had hit his side. Blood soaked his uniform, but he did not let go of the controls. "I am fine," he said through clenched teeth. "Just a scratch." It was not a scratch, but he kept flying anyway. Coordinated damage control, her voice steady even as the ship fell apart around her. Worked desperately to find any escape route, any gap in the enemy formation. Minyu kept firing until his last weapon went silent. And Captain stood in the center of it all, watching his crew fight, watching his ship die, knowing that this might be the end. "There," suddenly shouted. "A gap in their formation. The debris from our destroyed allies created a path. If we go now, we might make it." "Did not hesitate. Take us through. All power to engines." They limped toward the gap. Ships turned to pursue, but the debris slowed them down. With a final desperate push, the human vessel slipped through and vanished into the darkness of space. They escaped barely. But they were not saved. They were dying. They drifted through empty space far from any friendly port. The jump drive was destroyed. Half the systems were offline. Life support was failing. They had hours, maybe a day, before the ship became a tomb. Had passed out from blood loss. Was in the medical bay, his burns being treated by their limited supplies. Half the crew had injuries of some kind. Captain sat alone on the dark bridge, staring at the stars. Found him there. She sat down beside him without speaking. For a long time they just looked at the darkness together. "I led them into a trap," finally said. "I was so confident, so sure that we could win anything, and now look at us." Shook her head. "You could not have known, was clever. He used our own tactics against us." "That does not matter. I am the captain. Their lives are my responsibility." His voice cracked slightly. "We are going to die out here, far from home. No one will ever know what happened to us." For a moment said nothing. Then she reached out and put her hand on his shoulder. "Perhaps," she said softly, "but we are not dead yet." A weak communication signal broke the silence. Despite her own injuries, had managed to repair the receivers. "Captain," she said, her voice tired but determined, I am picking up coalition transmissions. The news is bad." She played the message. Admiral Torai's voice filled the bridge, heavy with despair. The trap had not just been for the. While the coalition was distracted, they had launched a massive attack. 3 more star systems had fallen. The main coalition fleet was in retreat. Warlord himself was leading an armada toward the. "The end is coming," Torai said in the recording. "All ships fall back to defend our home. We will make our last stand there. May the stars remember us." Turned off the message. The bridge was silent. They had failed, not just the crew of the, but everyone. The coalition was finished. They would be enslaved or destroyed. Everything they had fought for was about to end. Minyu spoke from the doorway. Nobody had heard him approach. "There is more. I intercepted a transmission. Warlord is planning a public execution. Prisoners from the conquered colonies, soldiers, civilians, children, will be killed as a show of strength." Closed his eyes. "When?" he asked. "At the final battle. He wants them to watch their people die before he destroys them completely." Silence again, long and heavy. Then stood up. His crew looked at him, wounded, exhausted, hopeless. They had given everything. They had nothing left. But in their captain's eyes, they saw something that surprised them. "Fire." "No," said quietly. "This is not how it ends." Frowned. "Captain, we can barely fly. Our weapons are destroyed. We have no jump drive. What can we possibly do?" Looked at each of them in turn. Minyu, who never showed fear, who never stopped trying, unconscious but still gripping the controls even in his sleep, working on repairs even from his medical bed. His crew, his family. "We can fight," he said. "We can show them that humans do not surrender, that we do not give up no matter how dark things become." His voice grew stronger. "Maybe we cannot win. Maybe we will die, but we will die standing. We will die fighting, and we will make them remember us." He turned to. "Find a way to get us to the. Use navigation beacons, emergency signals, anything." He looked at. "Get whatever he needs. Tell him to fix whatever he can." He faced Minyu. "Repair any weapon you can. Even one gun is better than nothing." They should have argued. They should have told him it was impossible, suicidal, pointless. Instead, they stood a little. The despair in their eyes began to fade. "Yes, Captain," they said together. And they got to work. The burned Warlord's armada surrounded the planet like a cage of death. Hundreds of ships blocked out the stars. Below, cities that had stood for thousands of cycles trembled under bombardment. Billions of lives waited for the end. Admiral Torai stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the destruction. His tentacles hung limp at his sides. Around him, the last ships of the coalition fleet formed a desperate defensive ring, fewer than 40 vessels against hundreds. "All evacuation transports have launched," Commander reported. His voice was hollow. "They are carrying what civilians they could reach. We are buying them time." "How much time do we have?" Torres asked. Did not answer. They both knew. Minutes, maybe an hour. Then they would break through and everything would be over. Warlord appeared on every communication screen. His massive form filled the display, his red eyes glowing with triumph. "Admiral Torres," he said, "you have fought well for prey, but the hunt is over. Surrender now and I promise your death will be quick. Resist and I will make your people suffer for generations." Torres raised himself to his full height. "The do not surrender, we will fight to the last." Laughed. It was an ugly sound. "Then watch this." The screen changed to show a transport ship filled with prisoners. Soldiers, civilians, children crying in their parents' arms. Guards stood among them, weapons ready. "These are from the colonies you failed to protect," said. "I will execute them now, one by one, and you will watch." The first prisoner was dragged forward, a young female, barely more than a child. She was shaking with fear, but she did not cry. She looked up at the camera as if she knew her people were watching. Admiral Torres felt something break inside him. And then a voice cut across every channel. "We are still here." Every screen flickered, every communication system crackled, and from the darkness at the edge of the battlefield, a single ship emerged. The ROKS. It was damaged, its hull was and burned. Smoke trailed from holes in its armor. One engine was completely dark. It looked more like a wreck than a warship. But it was flying, and it was coming straight for the enemy. On the flagship frowned. "The human ship, I thought we destroyed it." General stepped forward, his face showing concern for the first time. "We trapped them. We crippled them. How are they still alive?" Nobody answered. On this bridge, Captain sat in his command chair. His uniform was torn and dirty. Bandages covered wounds on his arms. Around him, his crew was in similar condition, battered, exhausted, running on nothing but determination. "But they were here," said, broadcast to both fleets. "Let everyone hear this." Nodded and opened the channels. Spoke clearly. "Warlord, I am captain of Earth. You have killed my friends. You have hunted my ship. You think you have won." He leaned forward. "You are wrong." On his screen, he could see the chaos his appearance had caused. Ships were turning, trying to respond to this unexpected threat. Coalition vessels were confused, uncertain. The prisoners on the transport ship were looking up at screens, watching. "Humans have a word," continued. "Spite. It means doing something not because you will win, but because you refuse to lose. Because giving up is worse than death. Because sometimes the only victory is refusing to surrender." He looked at his crew, standing ready at tactics. Minu, hands on the repaired weapons console. They had managed to restore one and a few missiles. Pale from blood loss but strapped into the pilot seat, refusing to stay in the medical bay. Watching from the engine room through a camera, ready to give them every ounce of power the dying ship could produce. Who had somehow kept them connected to hope. "This is our spite," said. "This is humanity." He cut the transmission. Then he gave his final order. "Take us in, aim for the flagship." The moved forward. Not fast, the damaged engines could barely manage half speed. Not strong, one against hundreds of enemy ships, but moving, always moving. The opened fire. Beams and missiles filled the space around the human vessel. Flew through the storm with skills that should have been impossible, sliding between attacks, using every piece of debris as cover. "We are in range," Minu reported. "Fire." The roared. The shot flew true and struck flagship directly on the shield generator. The shields flickered and failed. For one moment, Warlord's ship was vulnerable. And then something incredible happened. Commander's voice filled the coalition channels. "All ships, follow the humans, attack now." The fleet, which had been waiting to die, suddenly came alive. Ships that had been cowering behind defensive positions surged forward. Captains who had never attacked in their lives found themselves charging at the enemy. They had not come to win. It had come to show that winning was possible. That courage mattered. That one small ship, one small crew could change everything. General's cruiser intercepted the before it could fire again. The two ships faced each other, weapons locked. "You should have died in my trap," said over the communicator. "Why do you keep fighting? These aliens are not your people. This is not your war. Why do you sacrifice everything for them?" Captain answered simply, "Because someone has to." Did not understand, he never would. The two ships fired at the same moment. Both were hit, both were crippled. Cruiser spun away, engines destroyed, the lost its last weapon. But the path was clear. Behind them, the coalition fleet was fighting like never before. Captains, inspired by the humans, had abandoned their rigid formations. They were taking risks, flanking enemies, supporting each other. For the first time, they were not just defending, they were attacking. And they were winning. Warlord saw his fleet falling into chaos. He saw his generals failing. He saw the small human ship, broken and burning, still somehow pointing at his flagship. He felt something he had never felt before. Fear. "All ships destroy that vessel," he screamed. "Destroy it now." But it was too late. The coalition fleet had reached the flagship. Beams and missiles struck from all sides. The great command ship, which had conquered 100 worlds, began to break apart. His last sight was the stars outside his window, and a tiny human ship among them. Then there was only fire. The fleet broke. Without their warlord, without their command structure, the enemy ships scattered. Some tried to fight, they were destroyed. Others fled into deep space. In less than an hour, it was over. The war was not finished. There would be more battles, more struggles, more sacrifices. But the tide had turned. The coalition had won. And everyone knew why. Later, the floated in space, barely alive. Rescue ships surrounded it, carrying medical teams and engineers. The crew was being evacuated, treated, saved. Admiral Torres came aboard himself. He found Captain sitting on the ruined bridge, surrounded by broken screens and sparking wires. "Captain," the Admiral said, his voice was different now, softer, filled with something that might have been shame. "I underestimated your kind. One small ship, one small species, you changed everything." Looked up, his face was tired, but his eyes were peaceful. "We just did what we had to do." "No," Torres said firmly. "You did more than that. You showed us what courage looks like. You taught us how to fight. You gave us hope when we had none." He paused. "How can we ever repay you?" Thought for a moment, then he smiled slightly. "Help us get home," he said. "Earth is a long way from here. And when we get back, I want to tell them what we found out here, that we are not alone, that there are friends among the stars." Torres nodded slowly. "It will be done." He turned to leave, then stopped. "Captain, what you did today, charging into impossible odds, facing certain death, refusing to surrender, is that truly the human way?" Stood up. He looked out at the stars, at the ships gathering around them, at the debris of the enemy fleet scattered across the darkness. "Yes," he said quietly, "humans are stubborn that way. We do not know when to quit. Even when everything is lost, we find a reason to keep going. Some call it foolish." He paused. "We call it hope." Torres was silent for a long moment. "Then perhaps," he said finally, "the galaxy needs more humans." Laughed softly. It was the first time he had laughed in a very long time. "Be careful what you wish for, Admiral. We are quite a handful." Outside, the stars continued to shine. The war was not over, but somewhere in the darkness between worlds, a message was being sent toward a small blue planet called Earth. Humanity was about to learn that they were not alone. And the galaxy would never be the same.